ይስጥልኝ. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nahoo TV, Diplomatic Corner. My name is Professor Brook Hailubesha. I'm the producer and director of Diplomatic Corner. It's good to have you once again with us. Today, I'm really honored to have with me none other than the ambassador of the United Kingdom to Ethiopia, and he is Ambassador Dr. Alastair McPhail. He has been with us with Ethiopia, representing the great nation of UK for the last almost 4 years. He came to Ethiopia, presented his credentials in January 2019. He is also an ambassador to the African Union and to the UNECA. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador McPhail, thank you for accepting our request to interview you. And I believe that the day before yesterday, you officially, diplomatic protocol-wise, took leave of Her Excellency, the President of FDR of Ethiopia, Madam President. Ambassador, first let's start off with the highlights and the significance of the 100 plus years of Ethio-UK bilateral relations, which started, I believe, in 1903. If you could share with us the significance and the highlights of these relations.
Well, the relations actually go back to the century before that. And I think it has been clear to us, whether it was back then or in the current context, that it was important for us to have a good relationship with Ethiopia. We were one of the first countries to have diplomatic relations with Ethiopia. We have maintained a strong relationship throughout. It has gone through different stages, from early relationships with a different type of Ethiopia, through later when Emperor Haile Selassie took refuge in the UK. Then later, and more recently for the last few decades, we have had a very close partnership on development issues. We've been very pleased that our largest development program in the world was in Ethiopia, because we see that if Ethiopia can progress to meet its potential, then this will be a tremendous asset for all of us, particularly in the region, but not only. And in the course of all that time, as I said, we went through many stages. We fought with you against the Italians, going back to that era. But in the modern world, with so many challenges, it is important to think in terms of partnerships, things which join us rather than things which divide us.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Indeed, it goes back to centuries. Both are, well, at least Ethiopia was a monarchical system. We had a monarchical system. It goes all the way to the last emperor of Ethiopia, who lived in Bath for several years in UK. And not only that, there was a strong relationship with the British royal family, if I could say so, at the time. Very unique. Now, what's UK's foreign, economic and diplomatic policy? If you could give us, share your thoughts on that.
The UK's diplomatic, economic and development policies are all part of one single view of the world, which is that it is a connected world, and that whatever happens in the world is important, no matter how close or how far it is. And we want to see a more stable, a more prosperous, a safer world than we've often seen. There have been so many conflicts, including in this region, which have threatened stability and safety, and certainly prosperity. So the way we approach our policy and our relationships is as partners, and very much forward-looking rather than looking to the past. We are very conscious of our history, of course, but in terms of how we interact with other countries these days, it is about how we form partnerships to work together to build a better future together in which we all prosper. And that's the way we operate here in Ethiopia too. We work in a number of different areas, but always with a view to the future in which both partners are prospering.
Thank you, Your Excellency. UK is a significant player, I would say, quote unquote, in the world political arena. United Nations, and of course Brexit in the European Union until the exit happened and the like. And UK is there is now talk of reforming the Security Council of the United Nations. If you would like to say something on that, what's the position of the United Kingdom government, His Majesty's government, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the view of His Majesty's government is that the UN Security Council should be reformed and expanded with an increased number of permanent members. The working practices need to change. And that's not unique to the UN either. There are a number of international organizations or alliances or institutions which are no longer suited to the world we live in. They were created, many of them, immediately after the Second World War, when the world was quite different. And so when we look at reform of the UN Security Council, like I said, we favour expansion. We favour additional permanent members. And we hope that there will be serious discussion with a view to accomplishing those. There is, of course, discussion going on, but we hope that there will be successful discussion at some stage.
Yeah, wonderful. And by the way, Your Excellency, it goes back, as far as I recall, based on research, goes back to when the late Kofi Annan was the Secretary General. Serious studies were begun at the time in the United Nations. And it's quite interesting. Now it has been picked up in so many African universities and research centers, even among Ethiopian academics. There is a discourse. We take part in that directly and indirectly, And at least, by the way, when it comes to, the G20 recently in Bali, the president of the USA, Joe Biden, who was among the points that he raised was, to expand it, Maybe next year I would say 20 plus 1, 21, at least one seat for the African Union, I believe. So yes, indeed, I agree. Things are changing and moving ahead. Thank you for your insight regarding that. Now, Your Excellency, UK is engaged in bilateral relations with African states, really. And of course, as a former colonial power, from the Gambia in the west, all the way to today's Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, all the way to the east in Somaliland, British Somaliland. The presence of UK is felt. And there is a bond that cannot be broken with the United Kingdom, His Majesty's government. What is the UK's foreign economic and diplomatic, focus when it comes to these African states?
Well, our focus in building relationships with African states, or building them further, is to have modern partnerships with countries. Partnerships of equals, partnerships in groups. We are very interested in regional groupings in Africa. You mentioned earlier that I am the UK's permanent representative to the African Union, in addition to being our ambassador to Ethiopia.
Very true.
And we take that seriously too. We have increased our cooperation with the African Union in my time here to go beyond peace and security into issues such as climate, free trade, all sorts of areas where we didn't have such close cooperation before. And of course, yes, we are a colonial power, but that's not the only thing we have been in Africa. So there is the Commonwealth, which isn't, it's not run by the UK, it has its head office in the UK, but at the moment it is chaired by Rwanda, which wasn't a colony of the UK.
It was not a colony actually.
And there are other countries who have joined who were not colonies either. So I think that shows an interesting new dynamic in Africa.
True, I agree.
That there are countries which want to join, which weren't part of the empire.
Yeah.
And so we try to approach relationships with our African friends as partners, forward-looking in our relationships across a wide range of issues. Sometimes these are more convenient or easier than others. For instance, the Commonwealth provides a ready-made opportunity because of the regular meetings. But we always find other ways to get together.
Great. Thank you. You know what you remind me, Your Excellency, that is, when there are these kinds of associations, there are those who enter and there are those who leave as well. In the Caribbean, there is talk, it's getting to be a hot issue. I think in Jamaica as well, to leave the Commonwealth, while Rwanda joins the Commonwealth. I mean, it's a natural political process, I believe, And it's quite interesting that the Commonwealth is accommodative to, non-UK or non-British, I would say, colonies. It's really good,
Well, the Commonwealth can decide for itself, and it is the nations. The Commonwealth Secretariat doesn't decide. It is the countries themselves, when they come together at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings, who decide whether to admit new members or whether to suspend members or whatever. And I think it's great that it's no longer so UK focused, that it is actually, well, we call it a family of nations. And it's great that it is a family of nations.
Thank you. On the diplomatic side, in regard to what UK's diplomatic policy, I mean, make friends with all, of course. No country wants enemies. And in that respect, UK is well placed in the world, from New York City to Paris to Berlin to the metropolis or literally all African countries, capital cities. Now, in regard to the diplomacy means representation as well. In how many countries is UK now currently? Approximately, does UK have embassies, official, representation in the African continent?
Oh, in the African continent, that's a tough one, because we have expanded our representation in Africa. In my time here, we've opened new missions
Djibouti
in Djibouti, yes, but also in Chad.
Oh,
Chad. And we have now an embassy in Mauritania. We have one in Eswatini. We have a number of new missions, so I would have to check. I think worldwide we have about 170 missions, but that covers about 280 posts, because some are subordinate to embassies. But we have about, I think it's 167 or 168 ambassadors or embassy, sovereign missions, as we call them.
Yes, sovereign missions.
In Africa, like I said, we've expanded a lot in the last few years, so I wouldn't know exactly how many it is today, but of course we can check.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I have to share this with the audience, indulge with me, and that is, you were the first ambassador of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in the Republic of South Sudan. And also on top of that, if you could share with us.
Well, I was the first ambassador from any country in
that's
South Sudan in 2011.
Yes, 2011.
Just after independence. I had quite a long history with Sudan and South Sudan. Well, it was only one country, with Sudan, and was there at the birth of the new nation of South Sudan. And the government decided that they would make me the first ambassador. The South Sudanese government did. So I was very proud.
And history has been made.
Yeah, I was very proud to be the first ambassador to South Sudan.
Yeah, and also, if I could just push it a little bit, you are involved in the peace process?
I was, for the whole of the peace process, the 2.5 years of the CPA negotiations, which began in Machakos and finished in Naivasha. I was there at every round of the talks, but even before the process started and for a while after it.
Wonderful. And these are historical moments,
Yes.
Very complicated, but finally the output, the result was very, very positive in, I think, the CPA process.
Yes, there was a peace agreement signed. I mean, there have been some problems since then in both Sudan and South Sudan, but of course we wish both countries well, and we're working with both governments to support in any way we can.
Very true. Now, Your Excellency, talking about peace in Africa, Peace is the prerequisite of normal life. Any country, any society, peace to the world, peace to each country. If there is no peace, there is no work. If there is no peace, kids don't go to school. If there is no peace, normal, farmers cannot till the land. It will affect the human existence of food production as well. It's as basic as that, peace and security. And I know UK is very committed to that. I will come to the bilateral economic aid and the like in my next question. But for now, UK has contributed towards peace and stability in Somalia, in the Greater Horn area, and the like, and also in other parts of Africa. If you could give us the highlights of UK's contributions and commitment, to so that peace prevails in African countries, in the African continent.
Well, the UK contributions have taken different shapes and different forms. For instance, we have been involved in peace processes. We have been involved in back channels, passing messages between people in conflict. We have helped in post-conflict reconstruction, whether it is on the development side or institution building, or helping with economic or political reform. What the approach we usually take is one which supports peace in a way that the parties find useful and acceptable. We don't force our help on anyone. We discuss how we might help with a conflict or with reconstructing or helping implement a peace agreement if a peace agreement has been agreed. And it's something we think we take very seriously. It's not just because we are permanent members of the UN Security Council, which has a mandate for peace and security in the world, but also because we believe very strongly that we all benefit in all sorts of ways if there is peace. And then we can move on to other issues rather than just dealing with the misery of war.
Absolutely, exactly. And of course, in our part of the world, the Horn, in Somalia, at least now there is this transitional federal government. And within the framework of the EU in the past, individually and collectively, UK has contributed a lot to bring peace and stability in Somalia. And I believe the same thing in West Africa, in the fight against global terrorism and regional terrorism. What's the policy is very clear, but what measures, what levels of cooperation does His Majesty's government take when it comes to assisting and also collaborating with African governments and African regional organizations, as well as continental organizations like the AU?
As I said earlier, we have increased our range of cooperation with the African Union. But of course, the area everyone thinks of is peace and security because of the various conflicts around the continent. Taking your example of Somalia, we do have an embassy in Mogadishu, we do have an office in Hargeisa. We do the normal diplomatic relationship as well as a large development relationship. But we also have UK military training Somali troops to help them fight terrorists.
Al-Shabaab.
Yes, and we do that in others as well. We train peacekeepers going on UN and AU missions. We help pay, for instance, with Somalia, we help pay stipends for the soldiers from troop contributing countries. We do training of different sorts, whether it's how to take part in a peacekeeping mission or something more concrete like countering IEDs. So
very important.
There's all sorts of training we're happy to give, and we do a lot of it. So in addition to institution building, coping with conflicts, we do make those niche interventions in coordination with others that helps the peace support operations or even the peacekeeping operations as well.
also to countries like Ethiopia. I have researched, and it's also stated that Ethiopia ranks the top 3. Some years it was number 2, behind India, another former colony, as a recipient, economic recipient of economic aid of UK. If you could share with us what's the policy of economic aid in general first.
In my time here, Ethiopia has been number 1 as a recipient of assistance. That has been mainly as a result of all sorts of analysis on what the need is, but also how willing or how able a government or a partner institution is able to do things well. And the Ethiopian government has usually been really good as a partner in terms of economic development, with spectacular gains in the last couple of decades. More recently, it's been a bit more difficult because of the conflict in the north. But we still spend a significant amount of money here. More of it is now humanitarian than development because of the need. But where we are active, it is usually, in the different countries, it's usually because of an assessment on one side of what the need is, and on the other of how willing or able the government is to make best use of cooperation. But sometimes it's not for us. Sometimes they don't want it from us, they want it from another country or another institution, and that's fine too. We don't want to go where we're not wanted. So we've always enjoyed a good relationship with the government here. On development, we still enjoy a great relationship with the Ethiopian people, because it's the Ethiopian people we're really here to help, not just the government, and Ethiopian people of all over the country.
Very true, very true. I was going through UK's policy. Of course, there is the whole polemics of whether it's economic aid, economic dependency, that it consequences. There's all academic polemics on both sides, of course. And going through the UK policy, it's quite fascinating and interesting that the UK government, measures with outcome registered. To whom? To the people of Ethiopia, to the people of India, and how far the lives of the beneficiaries is transformed.
Yes.
That's a unique criteria, I would say, that UK implements.
For instance, when our Foreign Secretary was here a couple of weeks ago, if you were to say to him, he didn't talk about how much we spent. He talked about the number of people we were helping. So if you can talk about the number of children we're helping give medical assistance to, or the number of women and girls who are able to remain in education or stay healthy, then we're more interested in the numbers we're helping rather than the amount of money we're spending, because you can play games with numbers. Whereas if we can say, 1.3 million people have benefited from safe water programs, that is a much more meaningful way of discussing assistance than we have spent X number of pounds. Now that said, we still do spend a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And on the to help with the humanitarian consequences of the conflict in the north. We have spent a lot of money over and above the £76 million we committed as a humanitarian contribution. So we do look very seriously at how the money is spent, and who benefits from it.
Yes, I like the American expression of things, taxpayers' money, quote unquote.
Oh, we say it too.
You really?
Yes.
Great then. Taxpayers' money, because that's where the whole thing, it rests upon, especially in the Western democracies, liberal democracies, governments are accountable and responsible as to how they disperse the money, and this taxpayers' money that's collected.
Yes.
And in that sense, people want to know where the money goes. And on top of that, people want to know whether the taxpayers' money was well spent in India, well spent in country X, Y, or Z, in that sense. So your points are well taken. And if I may add, you have, as far as I know, as a policy, UK follows rather the 0.7 GDP formula?
Not at the moment. We want to get back to 0.7, but
Okay.
after COVID, our economy contracted. So at the moment, we are committed to 0.5.
I see.
But we would like to get back to
Back to, you
0.7
want to add 0.2 on top of it?
when our economy
Wonderful.
improves. But
Wonderful.
yes, we have always been committed to serious
Yes.
ODA spending, yes.
Yes, exactly. And among the countries that we can cite here, but it might be far, stretching it a little bit. UK is belongs to the top group of countries, democracies, free market economies that are committed towards that. That's what I want to share with the audience. And thank you for giving us this updated information regarding that. Okay, Your Excellency, in Ethiopia, so many projects are financed by UK, really. These are bread and butter projects like water. It might be women and young girls. It might be social services like schools and the like. In your presence here in Ethiopia, you have been everywhere. If you could just give us some examples, what really, how do you see, after 4 years, how do you see your stay here? Well spent?
It's been an interesting time.
Okay.
A lot has happened in those 4 years. We had COVID, we've had conflict, but not only in Tigray, in northern Ethiopia, but also elsewhere. There have been elections. There have been assassinations. In my first year, the Amhara regional president, Ambacho, was assassinated 2 days after we opened the WASH program, a water and sanitation program. The chief of defence staff was murdered on the same day. So it's been an eventful 4 years, but I would say that while it has been challenged and the government and governance structures have been challenged, we as an embassy and I as a person still believe that there is huge potential in this country, and that while it is important to find solutions to many of the challenges which have emerged, the general direction of travel is a positive one. And we hope that we can get back to focusing on that sort of thing rather than on conflict. But for me, my time here has been wonderfully satisfying and fulfilling. It's been a great job, and I will be very sad to leave.
Really?
Yeah.
Your Excellency, so many projects, we talked about financed and with the assistance of UK and the like. And of course, you meet people, all kinds of people in Ethiopia. You have traveled in every region, I bet, in your 4 years stay, Afar or what have you, and even in the north in Tigray, I believe, before the war or something.
Well,
like
and during the conflict. I've been to Mekelle during the conflict.
I see. And of course, one that's closer to Ethiopia is that this is the healing process is now there. People are positive when it comes to the agreement, the Pretoria and the Nairobi agreement. And also people, if you don't mind, people also wonder, some are really, in a way, saddened, to say that, why, this crisis occurred, and then what happened also is that people expect and they feel that, Western countries should call a spade, as to who started the war and these things like that. And people said that, when no positions were taken, in a way, people said, why would the UK wouldn't say point blank a spade is a spade, in that sense. If you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I don't understand it, to be honest. I've had conversations for 2 years with Ethiopians from all over the country.
Walks of life,
and all walks of life, about the conflict and about what we've said about the conflict. Since the 4th of November 2020, we have been quite clear, with both sides and with everyone else, that we were encouraging an end to the conflict, protection of civilians, accountability for any human rights violations and war crimes that had been committed, that the underlying concerns be addressed. But we have been clear in Parliament and in our statements that if we know that one side or the other has done something in particular, we've said so. We have criticised the TPLF in the British Parliament, and we've criticised the government in the British Parliament. So I would say that's calling a spade a spade. What we haven't done is try to make matters worse. So throughout the conflict, I have been in contact with all sides. As I said, I've been to Mekelle during the conflict. I went up and saw them about a year ago when the conflict was still quite hot. And I have maintained contact with them throughout the conflict, just as I've maintained contact with the government here. I've met the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Defence Ministers, etc., throughout the conflict, and I've been clear with them, that we want peace, etc. But you won't see me come out of those meetings and say, I've just had an argument with so-and-so and I've told them things
that's
like that. I don't think you achieve anything by that. So what we have done quite clearly is have very frank and open discussions with all sides to try and help in any way we can without making matters worse by getting into public arguments with anyone. And so when people say, well, you've been interfering in the conflict, I say, well, how? Tell me how. And people can't usually come up with an argument because we haven't interfered in the conflict. What we have done is been, like I said, we've been clear in our own parliament in criticising either side if we feel the need, but we believe we can do more by engaging with the parties direct.
Yeah, that's your government's position in your point. That's well taken. And thank you for your really frank explanation of your position and your engagement as well. Thank you. And of course, in the United Nations Security Council, there were so many, meetings called regarding this crisis in the north. And that also is one aspect that the Ethiopian audience, by the way, if I don't ask you such questions, they will ask me, Your Excellency, Doctor, they will ask me, hey, were you sleeping or doing something,
No, that's
and
fine.
that's typically, there are things that need to be clarified. And among friends, by the way, UK and Ethiopia people, their relationships goes back, and it will continue until time, hopefully, immortal. Our relations is steady. There are hiccups here and there, of course, but one has to diplomatically, find a solution, then move on, and really stay focused. And that, I think, the audience, they know very well. But that's my very reason of asking you that.
No, I don't mind. It's okay.
Good. May 2023, and King Charles III.
Oh, right, next year.
Oh, yeah. And the Ethiopian audience, they follow it up, so if not all, some of them, I assume it will continue, given the British parliamentary system, of course. If you'd like to care to say something on that. The process itself is a lot of pomp, a lot of culture, a lot of tradition, and the like, with a long British history,
Well, of course, there hasn't been a coronation in my lifetime.
There you go. You're going to be there.
Because the Queen was crowned before I was born.
52, 53, yeah.
53 she was crowned.
Yeah.
She ascended the throne in 52, was crowned 53. And as you say, she came here in 1965. We have some very nice photographs. The coronation next year will be interesting for us as much as anyone else. Even just after the Queen died, I went to a sporting event, an international sporting event, where I heard God Save the King, the national anthem, sung for the first time in my lifetime, because it was always God Save the Queen.
Exactly.
So for us, there's a bit of a change. But in terms of foreign policy or even domestic policy, I wouldn't expect to see changes. What we will do is we will celebrate the coronation, and we will get on with our work.
Get on with it, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And the whole world will of course, will follow with interest.
Yes.
I believe. Your Excellency, I have come to know that you are also a person, an authority, I would say, expert on Russia, Russian history, Russian political systems and the like, and that also you are a linguist. If you would like to share that with your departing audience, you know.
Well, I would say that I used to be a specialist in Russian. My degrees are in Russian. Okay. University degrees. I studied in the Soviet Union 3 times.
You studied in the Soviet Union?
I studied in the Soviet Union 3 times. And our first diplomat, my wife's a diplomat too. Our first diplomatic posting was Moscow. But that was after that is true. I've studied other languages. Whether it was at school or university, and the Foreign Office has taught me more languages as well. So I've been extremely fortunate to learn a variety of languages in different countries and in different contexts. I feel while it was done for the benefit of the organization or for my government, I have benefited hugely from it.
So you speak Russian?
I speak Russian, I speak Czech, I speak Polish.
Czech, Polish?
Yeah, French, German, Italian, Arabic.
Arabic as well?
Arabic, yes. Bit of Turkish, because I served in Ankara for 4 years.
I see.
So I've studied a lot of languages, and there may be more, but those are the ones that spring to mind.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And at the moment I'm learning Gaelic, which is the language of my part of the United Kingdom, Scotland.
Scotland,
yeah.
From Glasgow?
I'm from Glasgow, yes.
Wow.
Where COP26 was.
Wonderful, yeah. Wonderful. And for our audience, you are also stationed in Jerusalem.
Yes.
The Consul General, if you could share with us some of your stay.
Well, the Consul General job in Jerusalem is really the representative to the Palestinian Authority and to the municipality of Jerusalem. So it was really Her Majesty's representative to the Palestinians, if you like. It was an interesting time. It's always an interesting time. It was a challenging time, but like so many other experiences, it was one I felt was important to have. I have come across Ethiopians in the UK, and indeed I've been to Ethiopian restaurants in London.
Wonderful.
So, not just as part of my preparation for this job, but also in general. In London has every nationality in the world.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So I've come across Ethiopians of all types in London, and it's been very interesting talking to them in a number of different ways. So like the other communities in the UK, we treasure the rich tapestry that we have of the different parts of the world living in ours. Well, my family's old now. Well, they're not old, but my family has grown up. So
already?
My children both live in London.
I see.
At the moment, they've finished university, both of them. So they're doing other things. They're living their own lives, if you like. They don't need to come with me. And my wife's not with me because she is our ambassador in Djibouti.
Oh, is she the one?
She's the one.
She's the one who took away your job.
She took my job, yes.
Well, she took away a certain % of your load, I would say.
She did, yes.
Yes, she did.
So my wife is our ambassador in Djibouti.
Okay.
But she, of course, we keep in close touch. And she's coming here tomorrow for Christmas.
Wonderful.
And we will have a good time. And even though I'm leaving here in 2 weeks' time, she is staying in Djibouti a bit longer. So we still won't be quite in the same place, but we still think we're a close enough family. We keep in touch pretty constantly. Yeah. But of course, when everyone was younger, we were all together. Yeah. But no, my children live their own independent lives now.
Grown up. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. Thank you, Your Excellency. So I'll wrap up with, asking you one last question, and that is, what do you wish Ethiopians really regarding the future? You have now a certain bond. 4 years of your life was spent in Ethiopia. It will land in your resume, in your bio and the like. You plan to visit Ethiopia again, stay connected?
This isn't the first time I've been to Ethiopia, but I would say that, of course, I will remember this time very vividly. A lot has happened. I've been in the middle of a lot of what has happened. I will treasure my memories here, but I do wish Ethiopians of all nations, nationalities and peoples, of all genders and ages, professions, etc., all walks of life. I wish them peace and prosperity, good health, and happiness in the future.
Thank you.
I think the people of Ethiopia have been through a lot. They have so much potential, and I really do want to see this country flourish. So I will certainly be back. I hope that it will be peaceful, and I hope that people will remember me with a bit of a smile.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Since we are now in the Christmas season,
Yes.
Definitely Ethiopia is a secular nation now, of course, and we have Christians and Muslims and all kinds of denominations.
Yes.
Let's take this opportunity, golden opportunity, I would say, from the horse's mouth, from your, if you could like to wish Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to the Western as well as our Ganna is coming soon. Our Ganna, you are well versed in that. Our Christmas is going to be January.
Next month, yes.
Next month, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to follow it up.
The day after I leave.
Yes, if you could address both the diplomatic expat community, those who follow the Western calendar, as well as the Ethiopian one, I'll be more than honored on behalf of my audience.
Let me just say to everyone, those who are observing it, Merry Christmas, or those who are Jewish, Happy Hanukkah. There will be other festivals coming along, so Melkam Gunna, Melkam Addesamet.
Yes, there you go, you speak the language, you see.
And thank you for having me in your country.
Thank you.
Amasaganalo.
Thank you. United Kingdom's ambassador, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now approached the Western calendar, Christmas. Allow me to also wish all expatriates who watch our program, as well as internationally as well, not only here in Ethiopia. I wish all of the Christian faith, I wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. May 2023 bring peace, prosperity, and success to the peoples of UK, as well as to all Ethiopians, to all Africans, to all Europeans. Thank you for watching us. Please send us your comments and your wishes and questions. This is Professor Brook Hailu from Nahoo TV, Diplomatic Corner. Until I see you in our next program, I take leave of you in the premises of the British Embassy here in Ethiopia. See you soon. Take care.